6 years ago, I was very lucky. A lot of you may well know my predecessor, Peter van der Bulleman, who had been managing the Convention Centre for about 20 years. I had a very good product that I inherited. My job was really to move it forward now and to cater for the challenges of what was about to hit us. And a lot of that is a burgeoning competition that's happening around the world. So I guess the biggest success I've had to date was managing to extricate $350 million from the state government. And just to put that in perspective, I always like to show this slide. South Australia is 1 million square kilometres and has a population of 1.5 million people. Same size as Egypt, has 70 million people, 3 times the size of Germany that has 82 million people, and so it goes on. It also has the lowest gross state product of any of the mainland states and the lowest gross state product per capita. The one thing I always say is so fantastic about South Australia is it only has 7% of the population and 50% of the wine. And that's something that we push very strongly in marketing abroad. If we look at Adelaide itself, population of 1.2 million, we're competing against the really big cities, not only in Australia, but around the world, the Kuala Lumpurs that are moving forward now, the Parises, the Londons, you name it, we're competing against it. Because we're a regional city, we don't have many major corporates, so we're really not in that market. But we are one of the top 10 most livable cities. We call ourselves the 20-minute city, the thinking city, the festival city. And those are advantages that we market quite strongly. I talked about the competition. One of the things that's happening now is that the whole competitive environment has changed. There are so many venues out there, so many big new venues out there competing. And associations and conferences, big conferences, are understanding their value to a destination. So a bit like the Olympics or whatever else, cities are now having to actually bid for these big conferences. As a minor city competing in that environment where even the Melbournes and the Sydneys are putting hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table makes it extremely tough for us. So as Stephen says, we are still punching way above our weight. If we look at the Adelaide Convention Centre, it was actually the first purpose-built convention centre in Australia. It's been extended twice. The first is the light-coloured building to the left of that picture, which, as you can see, has absolutely no relationship to the river whatsoever. The second was a piece of the new building right at the back on North Terrace, separated, in fact, from the first building, and that was because there was a railway line in between. And then we had the third stage, which is actually built over railway lines. Now, why did the government agree to that $350 million? Well, let's just have a look at some of the track record of the Adelaide Convention Centre. Over 1,400 conferences held since it opened. That's over 4 per week for 52 weeks of the year. And when we talk about conferences, we're talking about what we call core business. That's people we're attracting into the city, not just the local meetings. We had nearly 100,000 students coming to school formally. We've had 113,000 guests through for our annual Standards Workshop, which is an event we put on for the public. We get on one night about 3,500 people, and on the other night about 1,600 people. So those are just some of the statistics we have. But what does that mean in terms of benefit to the state? Well, first of all, we contributed over $1 billion of economic benefit to the state. And most of our food and beverage is from within the state, 97%. And I always like to put that into things that people understand. So pardon my statistics there, but that's over 1 million prawns. If you line those up from toe to tail, that'd be 154 kilometres in length, or 385 times around the oval outside here. If we look at bread rolls, over 8.5 million bread rolls. If you look at beer, thousands, hundreds of thousands of litres of beer, which probably fill about 20 swimming pools now, not as said there's 7. And then the wine, of course, over 800,000 bottles, and you can see the implications of that. And then finally, just the cabling we lay around that building from day to day, over 800 kilometres, which is about enough to take you to Bendigo where you're holding the next conference. So a huge amount of benefit pouring into the state from this convention centre. Last year we attracted over 30,000 visitors. We had created about 60,000 bed nights, and so it goes on, and you can understand the importance. Our dilemma was that with all this new competition, we were the smallest and oldest convention centre in Australia. We had dated design, the old building, we had to walk upstairs to get to the toilets. There's no rear entry to the plenary halls. Actually, clients have been starting to try and avoid that building. We were losing a lot of the bigger events, we just simply weren't competitive anymore. But you never must forget that the majority of international conferences are under 1,000 people. So we often get a lot of conferences around 800. But within our centre, as it stands at the moment, we can only do one at a time. With the extension, we can do 2 or 3 at a time. So what we did is we went to government over a few years with a call to action saying that this success story is under threat. The ability to operate on a viable basis was also under threat, and the ability to be an economic driver was also under threat. And the fact is that over the last few years, well, throughout our history, we have operated independently of any subsidy, and in fact we return dividends to government from time to time. So with that we started to develop a vision, and you can see there behind me the stage 1 and the stage 2. We had to build stage 1 in order to accommodate the lost space in stage 2 while we demolished stage 2, which is the old building. Our bookings go, we're working on bookings now for 2018 and 2019. That's the distance we're working ahead on events. And so we had to make sure the space was available. Stage 1 is due to be complete by mid-2014, and that is in time for the World Aquaculture Congress, which will host about 3,000 delegates coming into the city. And stage 2 will be completed in 2017, and that really is when the real economic impact of this whole redevelopment kicks in. Knowing that we had now got the money, we had to move pretty fast, and there was no point in building a convention centre that represented state-of-the-art technology and design as it is today. We need to take a look at the future. We're not going to get funding like this for many years to come. So we became a sponsor, a gold sponsor of a major international study called Conventions 2020, which involved people from and players from all around the world. And that was quite important because there's been all this talk about what about electronic communication, is that the end of conferencing, is that the end of meetings, etc. And what that has told us is that in fact meetings are here to stay. The electronic media, electronic communication will aid conferences rather than detract from them. Networking is going to be the key reason why people meet. We see this all the time. We see it every time there's a GFC. We try and cut down on air traffic. The first thing the world leaders do is have a conference. But more and more of us, as we go to conferences, we are there to actually meet the people themselves. We can communicate electronically. We need to provide facilities for bilateral meetings amongst people. The ability to cater for technological change. We know how fast it's changing. Our infrastructure has to allow us to compete at the highest level. And flexibility of use. More and more convention centres are used for anything that requires that sort of space. So we're doing our own events now. We're doing art festivals, not just conferencing, Cellador wine festivals, a lot of things we're doing in that centre to try and keep turnover going and to ensure that we are economically viable. And already technological change is here. We develop our own apps now so that we can cater for conferences. We have live web streaming facilities available in every room. We were the first convention centre to do it. So based on all the information that we've gathered, we've developed a brief for the architects, for the contractors, and basically we said that centre needs to be iconic, like our existing building is, but that existing building is almost a prototype now for convention centres around the world. Most modern convention centres have a similar look. It needs to respect the architecture and the scale of the Adelaide buildings. It needs to operate in three distinct entities. And the reason for that is we want to be able to cater for those 800 conferences in 3 different buildings without delegates intermingling. Those of you who've been to Melbourne, they have a fabulous centre. It's unbelievable for Australia what's been put into that centre. Its biggest drawback is it's so big that you get lost in it. The delegates themselves are not enjoying going there because they're getting mixed up with other delegates and it's hard to wait for them. It needs to reflect us as the operator's requirements. More and more, we're under pressure to cut costs, staffing costs particularly, so it's got to be a very viable building to operate. It needs to cater for technological change, and the other key element we had is it needed to get EarthCheck Gold status. And that's quite different from a 6-star rated green building. EarthCheck Gold status is about international benchmark about how you manage your centre. And our motto has always been gold service, green attitude, rather than just having a 6-star rated building and then continuing to serve bottled water within that building. And that happens in a lot of centres. So I'd like to just briefly mention our green credentials. We were the first convention centre in Australia to get EarthCheck Silver status. We're the first convention centre in Australia to have conducted 2 carbon audits, which means that we can now calculate how much carbon your meeting is going to generate, and we can help you offset it. And for very small meetings, we offset it automatically and give you a certificate to say that you've had a carbon-free meeting. 95% of our organic waste is totally recycled. We were the first to use a biobin, which is a South Australian invention, which puts organic waste and converts it into manure. We were the first convention centre in the world to have introduced a worm farm. And I can tell you that worm farm has got worldwide recognition. It's probably the best investment we ever made from a marketing point of view. We won international awards about it. It's quite extraordinary. But those worms are my best employees. They're not unionised. And at the same time, you can see there they produced the 15 tons of waste, castings as we call it, and also the liquid waste. And all of that goes back into gardens. We also get involved in tree propagation, and we actually have staff planting days with Trees for Life. So there's a lot that we're doing. It's about actually managing and preaching what we talk, and rather than actually just having a green star rated building. So getting back to the development, I've always said that that top right-hand corner is the missing piece of the jigsaw. That's the area that really is that interrupts all of the development that might be happening to the west of Morford Street Bridge. Now you see the hospital being built there, you see the Samry building being built there, and you've got this hole in the ground, and never will the two meet until we fill that in. And that's my planning going back in there, Stephen. The stage 1 was really about filling in that missing piece of the jigsaw, and then also completing the promenade, which is the walkway in front of the convention centre, which at the moment stops directly in front of the convention centre, pushing that through to Morford Street Bridge so there's a link through, and then also widening the Morford Street Bridge to create a boulevard to link through back onto the Oval, etc. So quite a big project all in all. Perhaps just to demonstrate what's happening in the precinct now, starting with the Royal Adelaide Hospital to your left, then you've got the Samry building, then you've got possible future landmark buildings just to the west of Morford Street Bridge, then you've got our buildings, you've got the notorious footbridge going across to the Oval, which I've been involved in, rightly or wrongly, accused of all sorts of things. You've got the Adelaide Oval redevelopment happening right now, and then you've got the Intercontinental talking about redeveloping, and of course there's a lot of talk about the Adelaide Festival Centre as well. The footbridge is due to be finished in December 2013. The Oval, as you know, is also 2014. So a lot happening. In fact, $3 billion worth of development happening in this precinct, which is fantastic for us as a conference destination, because in fact that's what we need to attract people to Adelaide. So the delegates have got things to do at night. It just attracts our whole destination appeal. So getting back to the iconic SA building, or South Australia building, what it ended up with is like this. So what you see above is the Flinders Range with the striations and the crevices, and you see an interpretation of that in this building. Now that's partly by design and also partly for the fact that we have actually built there, or are building there, Adelaide's longest bridge. Because the railway lines that we built over previously are built over railway lines and platforms. Just where this building is being built, in fact, the railway lines have to converge to get under the Northern Street Bridge. So we've actually had to design a bridge over there. So that's a whole suspension building that's actually there. Going into stage 2 is an interpretation of a crystal from the Flinders Range. And you can see the shard-like development of stage 2 there. And the point about that is that that building actually leans out over the promenade. So you can start to get an idea of the fantastic views and things that you're going to get from that centre. And so what you end up with is 3 separate buildings which are distinct entities, and also you also get a building that's actually can be interlinked internally, so it can be one major centre. Just to quickly show you what's happened at the moment, already, those of you who may have been there, the Regattas restaurant has moved out onto the promenade. We're at the moment building new meeting rooms. Restaurant, you can see where it's rest, we're building new meeting rooms where it says exist meet, and then the new meeting rooms in stage 1. And there you can see how the railway lines actually converge. Won't spend too much time on this. This is the new Regattas restaurant, the Panorama Suite, which is the new function room above. The point about that particular picture is the incredible views that you get from there. And the 2 new buildings are going to be even further forward, and there'll be nothing like it, certainly in Australia. And I would challenge you to find too many places in the world that will have the outlook that these 2 buildings are going to have. The Regattas restaurant itself, what we're trying to do at the moment is reposition the convention centre slightly so it becomes a much more public space. So we're doing our own events now, like, as I said, the Stellenbosch Wine Festival. We created for the Fringe now a new precinct called the Big Slackle. We're doing events in there, which is part of the Fringe. We host the Santa's Fun Run, which we sponsor, which is all the Santas in their Santa suits running around the lake. We have moving art exhibitions going on now, and at the Regattas restaurant on Friday night is live at 5, which is just trying to get the public down there to enjoy the seating along the promenade. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. This is the floor plan of the completed centre. So it's stage one over here at basically the ground floor plan, the existing building, and then stage 2 over there, which is what we call the plenary building. Now, I just want to dwell on this slide slightly because this is at the upper level looking at the same plan. And what you see at the stage 2 there is what I call the 2 Mickey Mouse years. Now, what we tried to do with this convention centre, as I said right at the start of that design brief, was to make it as flexible as possible. So all the dotted lines you see, they're all operable walls, they can all move around, we can change configurations. But stage 2 is here, and this is all the configurations that that building could be in at this level. So it could be one big, great auditorium, 3,500 people. If you go to the top right one, it could be seating, half the seating up, half the seating down. We can have exhibition in the plenary for 1,000. And the way that works is all of that seating is hinged, and it can just lift up into the ceiling like that. And the underside is lit, so you can have all flat floor, half flat floor, all raked, half raked. On all rate, it's a capacity of about 3,500 people. Now, the new innovation is the two Mickey Mouse ears. And what they are is within this configuration here, these are two circular areas of seating. And at a tea time, we can press a button, and that little circle will just spin around and face the other way. So we can create two separate little theatres, just spinning them around, and have it set up with staging already, and create two small theatres for 300 delegates each within 5 minutes, literally. The problem we have with the other ones is you've got to set up new staging, and that takes time if you change the configuration. This we can do in a tea time. It's about finished. Just to show a bit more of the way the seats lift up, etc. I want to do that. And then some artist impressions. This is looking from Morford Street Bridge back towards the Intercontinental Hotel. This is looking, same shot. This is stage one, basically. This is looking from North Terrace, with improved access up onto the bridge. This is looking above the railway lines, with the building actually suspended over the railway lines, and that's it. So just in conclusion, I'm hoping in 2015 I'll see this with Adelaide Convention Centre.
Yeah. Way to go. Well done. That's bloody impressive looking.
Well, members, it's particularly stimulating and interesting talk. I'm sure there's many questions, but unfortunately time does not allow. So it only remains for me to thank Alec for his stimulating talk and to wish him Godspeed with this fantastic development, and hope it all goes well. And join me in thanking Alec for his